Okay, so now we're going to talk about, instead of talking about relative pronouns, we're going to talk about relative adverbs. So relative adverbs, they are when and where. Well, for some books, they say you can also use why to talk about reason. But when we use when, we are modifying the antecedent, which has to be a time. When we're using where, it has to be modifying antecedent, which is a place. So don't confuse the when and where here with our adverbial clause. For example, when I got up, I had a cup of coffee. So do you see how in this case, even though I have when, this is not a relative adverb. This is not an adjective clause. It is an adverbial clause because there is no noun for me to modify. There's no antecedent before this clause for me to modify. All right, so just keep in mind that they are different. And we also have to know that when should I use essential? When should I use non-essential adjective clause? So in the two example sentences here, the first one, obviously without commas, is our essential adjective clause because the month is a very general noun. Whereas the second one is non-essential because it has a comma. And that is why the noun it modifies is a proper noun. Saudi Arabian city of Mecca, right? Religious city. Okay. And now, if we move down to talk about time, the lives of thousands of Germans suddenly changed on the night East German soldiers began building the Berlin Wall during that night. So do you see how during that night is modifying on the night? So of course we would change it to when. And remember our relative adverb, like our relative pronoun, needs to come before the adjective clause. So it becomes the lives of thousands of Germans suddenly changed on the night when Eastern German soldiers began building the Berlin Wall. And this is essential because the night is a general term and we want to specify. So look at the second example where now it's non-restrictive or non-essential. On November 9th, 1989, this is a very specific date. So when the wall was torn down, that becomes non-restrictive, which is why you need to use the inserter commas. Okay, so same thing with place. The city, which is a general noun, so where citizens had lived, worked, shopped relatively freely, that is our essential adjective clause. But today, if I'm talking about Berlin, which is a German city, it's a proper noun, then the adjective clause now becomes non-essential or non-restrictive with two commas. Okay, so this is quite straightforward, but keep in mind that it is also possible to write time and place clauses with the relative pronoun which, that, or omit plus a preposition. What does that mean? There are several different versions. They are all talking about the same thing. So March 31st, 1980 was the day. Well, we know we're modifying the day. So this is our antecedent. And since the day is a time, of course, we can use relative adverb when. But I can also use on which. Why is that? Because I was born on the day. So I can use preposition on. And of course, if you remember, the less formal version would be dangling preposition at the end. It was the day which I was born on, that I was born on, or I can even omit because this is essential adjective clause and the relative pronoun is objective case. Okay, so one more time. The second example. Now we're talking about a place. Cody, Wyoming is the town. The town is a general word, right? So this is a place antecedent. So of course I can use relative adverb where I grew up. But I grew up in the town. So of course I can use preposition in which I grew up, or the less formal version with dangling preposition at the end, which I grew up in, that I grew up in, or omit I grew up in. All right. But now, remember, you cannot omit if this is non-restrictive. So for example, if I say September 12th, 1988, comma, when I was born, comma, I don't know, was more than 34 years ago. Okay. So looking here, because I'm modifying the antecedent, September 12, 1988, which is a very specific time, right? So the when I was born is non-essential. So of course I can say I was born on September 12, 1988. So I can say on which I was born, but I need to keep the comma. So I can say which I was born on, but I cannot use that or omit because this is non-essential. And that is it for our adjective clause with relative adverbs.